Hey guys, welcome back to Art 1 and your first lesson. I have never imagined that I would be teaching you virtually, but I'm glad that we are at least at home safely. So I'm not used to being recorded, so I may make a lot of mistakes or just plain awkward. But please know that all of us at Lake Travis High School is trying our best, and I hope that you will watch through the next 10 minutes learning about linear perspective. So thank you in advance. So let's go ahead and start with a linear perspective. I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen mode. All right, and present. I'm just going to put myself down in the corner. All right, so today we are going to learn about linear perspective technique, its usage, and the history behind perspective. By end of this lesson, you should be able to understand and distinguish three major elements that makes a successful linear perspective drawing, which are orthogonal line, vanishing points, and horizon line. And after this video, you should be able to ace your first perspective quiz. So let's talk about what linear perspective is. So imagine driving along a very straight open road on a grassy plain. The road, the fences, and the power pole all diminish towards a single point far ahead of you. That is an example of linear perspective. Linear perspective uses principles of math to create a realistic space, creating an illusion of that on a flat surface. Now, I love linear perspective because it is like a magic formula for us to create a realistic space. Before we start learning about this linear perspective, let's sort of explore the problems that artists faced before the discovery of linear perspective. So here we have two paintings, both visually narrating the Last Supper from the Bible. I'm sure you're already familiar with one of its paintings. That's right. It is a painting by Leonardo da Vinci. The painting on the left is a work by an artist named Duccio. Take a look at both paintings and think, which painting looks more realistic to you? If you said The Last Supper on the right by Leonardo da Vinci, you're correct. Now, Leonardo da Vinci's painting is a perfect example that I can show you with a successful linear perspective. But before that, I sort of want to talk about Duccio's painting first. His painting is from early 1300s, which is pre-Renaissance time. You can see that Duccio's interest in creating a real space for Last Supper, because if you look at the top of the room, you can see his tries on how, creating a depth of the room. But the space just does not make sense. He's not able to successfully render the realistic space. If you look at the table seems to be floating and it feels like it's about to flip over. And the people on the background, on the back, appears to be on a higher elevation compared to the figure on the bottom. Now, Duccio was not the only artist who had a hard time creating a realistic space on a paper. Most artists had this problem for a very long time. Well, that is until Filippo Brunelleschi. Filippo Brunelleschi is a famed Italian architect, engineer, artist, and a sculptor. And he is the one who discovered a specific methodology for achieving an accurate perspective in art. And he was the very first artist to successfully and accurately achieve perspective in art, as you can see on the right here. This is a sketch of a church of San Spirito by Brunelleschi in 1428. On the picture on the left, that's an image or picture of this church now. If you compare these photo with his sketch, you can see the amazing accuracy and realism through his sketches. Brunelleschi's achievement in linear perspective made a huge impact in the rise of modern science, architecture, engineering, and in art, helping us draw more accurate, realistic paintings and drawings. So let's go back to Leonardo da Vinci's painting. This time, we're going to focus on what makes his painting a perfect example of linear perspective. Take a look at it. Everything seems to be real. If this was a photo, I would believe it. Now, before we decode his painting, we must understand orthogonal lines. Now, before we discuss further into painting, imagine this picture that I have ready for you. Imagine you're in a dormitory, college dormitory hallway, and there are 3 doors that are exact same size and height. I am able to draw multiple horizontal lines that are going to be parallel to each other. And we already know the definition of parallel. The parallel lines, 2 lines that travels in the same distance, same direction with an equal space apart, that they will never intersect at any time. As you observe here in this picture, I have drawn out orange line for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different parallel lines that are horizontal to each other. Horizontal. I also placed 3 guys in front of it that have the same build and height. Now, this is your perspective when you're facing the door. But if you turn to left and walk down the hallway, your perspective will change like this. Notice all the horizontal lines that I have drawn for you with the orange line. If I draw the same lines again, they're no longer parallel to each other. They actually recede to 1 point. And what happens to the size of objects and the person? It seems like door on the left seems to be smaller in size than door on the right. Now, it's because we change the perspective, the door on the left seems further away from you, as like how we were driving down the road and objects further away from you seem smaller, but as you drive closer to it, the object seems bigger and bigger until it passes you. Same concept. These parallel lines in physical spaces, they are still parallel lines, but it appears to recede to that 1 point. Now, these orange lines, these horizontal lines, are what we call orthogonal lines. Take some time to write down this definition. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so. Now, if you look back at Leonardo da Vinci's painting, do you see all the orthogonal lines now? If I follow the ceiling tile, you may notice that it all goes to 1 point. And if I follow all these rectangular shapes that was on the side of the wall, you will see it all recedes to 1 point. These are examples of orthogonal lines. Now, we talked about how it all recedes to 1 point, and that 1 point is called vanishing point, which is a second element that makes successful linear perspective. So if you look at Last Supper painting from Leonardo da Vinci, we notice that all orthogonal lines recedes to that 1 vanishing point, in this case, which is on Jesus Christ's right eye. This was not a mistake. Leonardo da Vinci was very clever to put right vanishing point on Jesus' right eye. Placement of vanishing point was to emphasize the importance and central position of Christ, the drawing the viewer's gaze on him. Now that we have this talked about vanishing point, I'm going to give you your definition of vanishing point. If you can take some time and pause your video to write down this definition, I'll appreciate it, and it will help you with the quiz later. So let's go ahead and move on to third and the last element of linear perspective. So we know orthogonal lines and vanishing points. The last element, horizon line. So let's go ahead and sort of zoom into, sort of look at our doors again. We know all the orthogonal line and vanishing point. Horizon line actually rests on vanishing point. It's always going to be resting on where the vanishing point is. Now, it refers to a physical boundary between sky, land, or water where it meets. It is also known as eye level. It's an actual height of a viewer's eye when looking at an object, interior space or exterior space. You're actually looking at the far out horizon line that is a physical boundary between sky and the land. If you look at Leonardo da Vinci's painting, you will see out the window where his vanishing point is. It perfectly aligns with the horizon line. You see that? Right. So let's go ahead and move on to why horizon line placement is important. It's because objects look different depending on eye level, which changes the horizon line location on your page. If you see here on a high angle perspective, which is on your left-hand side, you see the top and the side of the column. It's because you're higher on the plane and you're looking down, you're able to see the top surface. But when your eye level changes to our eye level, you won't really be able to see the top nor the bottom of the forms, just the middle surface. But if you are as small as an ant and you're looking at objects from low angle, you're probably going to be able to see the bottom of the form if it was actually floating in the middle of the air, and the side of the shape and form, but really not the top surface of the form. So your eye level really changes how you're going to perceive your forms and shapes. So let's go ahead and recap. We talked about Filippo Brunelleschi, who is the first one to discover linear perspective. Linear perspective itself is a technique that we use to create realistic space on a flat surface, orthogonal lines where all the parallel horizontal lines sort of meet and recedes to one point where it meets at that vanishing point, and the horizon line where the vanishing point lies, also known as our eye level. Now that we have learned and recapped all these, what I want you to do, I want you to go to Schoology and access the perspective quiz. And there are 10 questions, 10 questions, 10 points each, which should be an easy A for you. For the next lesson, we are going to talk about how useful linear perspective will be for our careers and in art. All right, till then, bye.